Kim Jong-un. Okay, got it. The lead starts right now. Breakdown: President Trump on his way back from Vietnam after talks with Kim Jong-un collapse, and after the president shocks the world by accepting a brutal dictator's word on the death of an American. And after the president lands, the turbulence will recommence. His former lawyer back on Capitol Hill today after alleging ruthless tactics and schemes that made the man who won the White House. Plus, another rising Democratic star on the verge of joining the race to face Trump. Beto O'Rourke says he's made up his mind about a 2020 bid. CNN caught up with him. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're following three major stories unfolding today. All of them, frankly, bad news for President Trump. President Trump experiencing major challenges abroad as his presidency is under siege at home. Hours after the president walked out of his much-hyped second summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Today, his former fixer, Michael Cohen, is testifying yet again on Capitol Hill. Yesterday, Cohen delivered a brutal public testimony calling the president of the United States a racist and a con man who directed many of the crimes Cohen committed. Cohen, of course, has credibility issues and, in fact, is going to prison in part for previously having lied to Congress. That said, Cohen provided House Democrats with a long list of potential crimes and schemes to investigate and future witnesses to grill. The president has, of course, been more focused recently on the nuclear threat posed by North Korea the last few days, and he now says he's involved in trying to pull two other countries with nukes back from the brink, India and Pakistan. We're following all three of these critically important stories from Capitol Hill to India to Vietnam. President Trump is currently on his way back from Hanoi after that abrupt early end to his high-stakes summit with Kim Jong-un. In a press conference that had to be moved up after the talks collapsed, the president defended that decision, but he did not get out of town without saying something that even many Republicans vocally said they found reprehensible. President Trump telling the world he does not hold Kim Jong-un responsible for the torture and ultimate death of an American college student, Otto Warmbier, after Kim, a serial human rights abuser and absolute ruler, denied knowing about Warmbier's mistreatment. Warmbier, who was arrested for a petty crime, died just days after being released from North Korean prison. He entered North Korea as any other healthy young college student. He was returned to the U.S. in a coma. President Trump said this today about the man ultimately responsible for Warmbier's death.
He felt badly about it. I did speak to him. He felt very badly. But he knew the case very well, but he knew it later. But he tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word.
I will take him at his word, the president says, just like he took the word of the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who was denying involvement in the murder of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and just like he took the word of Vladimir Putin when he denied interfering in the U.S. election. The president yet again taking the word of brutal dictators regarding crimes against their victims, including Americans. CNN's Caitlin Collins starts off our coverage today with more from Hanoi, Vietnam.
I'm never afraid to walk from a deal.
And that's exactly what President Trump did today, leaving Vietnam without a deal and on an empty stomach after talks with the North Korean dictator fell apart. The president and Kim Jong-un canceling lunch and a joint signing ceremony after reaching a standoff during their second nuclear summit.
Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety, and we couldn't do that. They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that.
The North Korean demand, a deal breaker for Trump, but a sigh of relief for aides who feared he'd make major concessions.
I could have 100% signed something today. We actually had papers ready to be signed, but it just wasn't appropriate. I want to do it right. I'd much rather do it right than do it fast.
As of now, the president says there's no third summit on the horizon.
I mean, it might be soon, it might not be for a long time. I can't tell you.
And despite talks falling apart, Trump speaking highly of Kim to reporters before leaving Hanoi.
This wasn't a walk away like you get up and walk out. No, this was very friendly. We shook hands. There's a warmth that we have. Now, I hope that stays. I think it will.
But Kim leads one of the most repressive regimes on the planet, one that's widely blamed for the death of Otto Warmbier, an American college student who was detained in North Korea and sent home in a coma only to die days later.
He tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word.
Trump siding with the North Korean dictator while angering allies at home.
We know what happened to Otto. We know what this country has done.
Though the president's critics sounded hopeful about the outcome of his summit.
A deal that fell short of complete verifiable denuclearization would have only made North Korea stronger and the world less safe.
Now, Jake, after the president left Vietnam today, the North Korean foreign minister came out with a statement disputing the president's account of why those talks broke down, saying that they requested some of the sanctions be lifted, but not all of them, like the president said. When the president stopped to refuel in Alaska, Sarah Sanders was asked about those comments. She said the president was aware of them, but had nothing further to add for right now. Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins in Hanoi, thank you so much. Let's start with our experts. David, is there anything you could call a success coming out of the summit?
Look, again, I think success is continuing to talk. There hasn't been a missile launch from the North Korean state in over 400 days. During the Obama administration, there was a missile launch about every 24 days. So, look, as long as they continue to talk, I think it's a huge success. I do think, look, the president.
Huge success, really?
Yeah, I do. Listen, I think that as long as two people are talking, two nations are talking about denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, it's a big success. Every president, up until this president, had the opportunity to kick the can down the road, whether it was President Bush 41, President Clinton 43, Obama. They all thought they had the luxury of time. These guys will never have a missile system capable of delivering a missile to the United States. They're not going to have a nuclear. Karen, don't shake your head. That's exactly what happened. So everyone kicked the can down the road thinking they had time. We don't have time anymore. We need to talk.
Karen?
So that was a good spin. You did a good job. You did your people well. Look, I think one of the biggest signs of what a failure this was the fact that the president came out and said, I believe, Kim, that he didn't know anything about what happened to Otto Warmbier. Because if that...
Otto Warmbier.
Warmbier, sorry. That sent a signal, I think, that he is trying to preserve the relationship with Kim because he knows it was a failure. It also shows this is what happens when, I get we all think that, you guys like to say that this president, he's non-traditional, he does things his own way. Well, having worked for a President Clinton, I can tell you there's a lot of work that goes into these trips beforehand, so you don't have this kind of embarrassment where a luncheon menu has been set out and people expect that there's going to be a signing ceremony and oops, it doesn't happen because you did not do the work and properly understand the sequencing and properly understand your adversary and what he needed to be able to go home with.
But that's mischaracterization. That's your interpretation.
Right, and you got to say yours and I got to say mine.
Mary Catherine, let me ask you, there are critics who say that every time President Trump does this, he's elevating Kim Jong-un on the world stage, and this is 0 for 2. Yes, the missile testing stopped and the nuclear testing stopped, although some say they don't need to do any more nuclear testing. They already know that they have a working nuke. But do you think this was a mistake, ultimately?
Yeah, with North Korea specifically, I'm okay with doing something different, even weird, him being an unconventional actor, and maybe that's throwing everything off and sort of messing with the system and sort of popping something loose here. But, as Karen's noting, that should come with pre-negotiations, with an idea of what the guy's coming to the table with, what he'll accept and what he will not. And then Trump, because he is this totally unorthodox actor, I do not always trust him to have a plan when he's in the room or to know what sort of the moral line is for America, because he gets very transactional about these things. And I think the tell, if you're going to confer all this importance on North Korea and legitimacy, then you've got to get something out of it. And the tell for me that he went in there not ready to get something out of it and not with the right perspective is the Otto Warmbier stuff. It's horrendous to say that he had nothing to do with this, that he didn't know about it. It was just like an accident. And by the way, in a perfectly Trumpian moment, it undercuts one of his actual accomplishments, although somber. It's important to bring Americans home, and he did that with Otto Warmbier, and now he's saying, nah, they're not to blame. That worries me deeply.
Kirsten, take a listen to how Rick Santorum, a former Republican senator from Pennsylvania, reacted to that soundbite, to the comment from President Trump on how he took Kim Jong-un's word for it when it came to Otto Warmbier. He didn't know that he was being mistreated. Take a listen.
This is reprehensible, that what he just did. He gave cover, as you said, to a leader who knew very well what was going on with Otto Warmbier. And again, I don't understand why the president does this. I am disappointed, to say the least.
What do you think?
Well, yes, that's exactly right. I think the other thing that Trump doesn't understand is that what was done to that poor college student was also was meant to be kind of a middle finger to Trump. Right? I mean, it really was.
Well, the United States in general, not just.
Well,
not
he's the president of the United States.
Okay.
So it's not. It is literally saying to him, I'm going to do this. There's nothing that you can do about it. And I have this little respect for you and your country that I will do this with no concern whatsoever about any ramifications. I mean, you do not do something like that to an American citizen and then unless you believe that you're not going to be held accountable. And I think most Americans know that. Most Americans know that the reason they feel pretty safe traveling is because they can rely on their government to protect them and at a minimum punish people who do these kinds of reprehensible things to Americans.
David, why say I take Kim Jong-un at his word the same way he took Mohammed bin Salman at his word, the same way he took Vladimir Putin at his word? Why not just say, my heart goes out to the Warmbier family, it's a horrible tragedy, and then just like not even get into absolving Kim Jong-un for this tragedy, for this brutality?
Yeah, so look, you know, you're not going to hear me disagree with Senator Santorum's remarks earlier today. I think that the notion that somehow something goes on in the Hermit Kingdom without Kim Jong-un understanding it or sanctioning it doesn't pass a straight face test. I do think, look, I mean, this may be a scenario. I don't know if this happened. You know, they grab the kid, they rough him up, he gets brain damage, something bad. No, let's say something. No, I don't know. I'm saying this may have been a scenario where President Kim said, I didn't know that he was going to be killed. He may have been captured. No, listen, I'm just saying that could have been a scenario. I think that it's reprehensible. I think the president should have stood up there and said, listen, this is the terrible thing. We're going to hold him accountable. We can't let this happen. Shouldn't have said what he said. It's clear. I don't think anybody's standing anywhere in America today saying, oh, that was okay to say. What I will say,
there's an American in North Korea that they don't know.
No. So, but what I will say,
they don't. It's impossible.
But what I will say
is that they don't know everything that's happening.
Separating those two, separating the misstatement, right? The president's gaffe there, saying that which he shouldn't have made, right? Complete misstatement from the point about not having done any spade work. Look, I think that Secretary Pompeo, Steve Biegun, the special envoy to North Korea, lots of folks have been doing lots of spade work since the last meeting on this. And the notion that somehow the president just jetted over there and did a drop-by is a little bit
no, that's true. But just sources tell CNN that Trump's aides warned him in the days and even the hours leading up to the talks that North Korean negotiators were not budging from their demands that they have sanction relief before they do anything. But the president, our reporting says, thought he could go in the room and with the force of his personality change the equation, and it didn't work.
Yeah, and it didn't work. And so, you know, how are we any worse off for it at this point, right? I think the president, you keep pushing, you get up. If anything, it shows that we're not going to. President's not. Everyone was worried he's going to take a bad deal. He's going to come back with a bad deal. President will stood up and walked away.
Well, and in fairness, that is the one thing that he did right. He walked away from a bad deal. But it suggests that it must have been really bad for him to walk away because he was in such need of a win, given how they built this up and, again, created all this hype. There is no way that the North Koreans haven't been watching what's been going on in the United States over the last week and knew he was coming to this summit in a very weakened condition and probably figured we don't need to give him what he needs. And by the way, Kim gets to go back to his country and say, I stood up to the Americans. They're not going to take us for fools. And here comes our president. Yes, he walked away. But again, we don't now know, this is what the experts are saying, what is the actual status of our relationship with North Korea. And we can't even verify that they've done the things that they said they did from the last time we met.
It's no worse off than it was the day before President Trump.
You don't know that.
I do want to say, Nikki Haley tweeted, Americans know the cruelty that was placed on Otto Warmbier by the North Korean regime. Our hearts are with the Warmbier family, and that is true for all of us at the table here. Our hearts are all with the Warmbier family today, and I'll just leave it at that. He dropped President Trump's inner circle and his kids, and now House Oversight is saying, all of you are going to hear from us the legal hazards ahead for the president and his family, thanks to Michael Cohen. The other, perhaps more immediate endangerment. The politics lead now. Michael Cohen back before Congress today after that explosive public testimony yesterday that gave investigators a potential gold mine of leads to explore about his former boss, President Trump. Cohen told lawmakers that then candidate Trump committed crimes. He outlined how he brought those crimes. He brought receipts. He told lawmakers where to go to get more, who else to interview. Of course, Cohen is a proven liar. He's going to prison in part because he previously lied to Congress, who even made some questionable claims while telling his version of the truth yesterday. As CNN's Jessica Schneider reports, Cohen's testimony could be full of new territory for investigators.
Michael Cohen capping off 3 days on Capitol Hill, today behind closed doors. His sit-down inside a secure facility with the House Intelligence Committee comes after an explosive open session Wednesday with House oversight.
He is a con man, and he is a cheat.
House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff told CNN his committee would focus on finding out more about the president's potential criminal conduct. Schiff tweeting, "We'll examine in depth many of those topics, including Trump Tower Moscow, Roger Stone WikiLeaks, and any White House role in Cohen's false statements to Congress." The committee wants to examine Cohen's claim that Donald Trump Jr. told his father about the meeting with the Russians at Trump Tower before it happened in June 2016, as well as Cohen's claim that Roger Stone informed the president that WikiLeaks was about to expose emails from the Clinton campaign and the DNC. House Oversight Chairman Elijah Cummings said there's a lot more investigating to be done across Congress.
What we did yesterday was we gathered a lot of information that I think will be, we may not look into it our committee, but one of the 5 or 6 committees will.
One focus for Cummings, hush money payments Cohen says he made to Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet about an alleged affair with Trump years before. Cohen showed lawmakers 2 reimbursement checks. One he said was signed by the president, and the other he said was signed by both Alan Weisselberg and Donald Trump Jr.
And do you know if this criminal financial scheme that the president, Alan Weisselberg, and Donald Trump Jr. are involved in is being investigated by the Southern District of New York?
I'd rather not discuss that question because it could be part of an investigation that's currently ongoing.
Alan Weisselberg is the Trump Organization's CFO, and he's provided testimony to federal prosecutors in Manhattan in exchange for limited immunity. Chairman Cummings says he may call both men in for questioning before House oversight. And Cohen opened the door to financial and tax fraud investigations, handing over the 2011 and 2013 financial statements Trump allegedly gave Deutsche Bank as the basis for a loan to buy the Buffalo Bills. Cohen suggested Trump inflated his worth for this loan, as well as on other occasions when it suited his interests.
Did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
And Cohen also suggested that prosecutors in New York are looking at other potential criminal conduct by the president beyond those hush money payments. Of course, we've already reported that SDNY is looking into the Trump Inaugural Committee, as well as executives at the Trump Organization. And Jake, of course, with House Oversight Chair Elijah Cummings saying that he expects widespread investigations over several committees. It appears that these 3 days of testimony from Michael Cohen may just be the tip of the iceberg. Jake?
All right, Jessica Snyder, thanks so much. 2 great legal minds with us, legal reporter Laura Jarrett, legal analyst Laura Coates. Laura, let me start with you. If you take Cohen at his word, and that's a big if, that's a big if, but if you do, he gave lawmakers a lot to examine. 1 day removed now, here's just a few of the potential crimes he's alleging the president committed: perjury, bank fraud, insurance fraud, election fraud, witness tampering, making false statements, and there are a lot more. What do you think is most potentially legally problematic for President Trump?
I mean, first of all of those are problematic, but the one that really was very problematic to me was the idea of the campaign finance violations. The reason for that is because you already have a U.S. Attorney's Office in New York who has said that this person, Donald Trump, is essentially an unindicted co-conspirator. They've already signed on. It's past investigation. It's now an actual offense. Someone's been convicted to it. It was a felony related to it. We know from Cohen's testimony that he identified the person as individual 1 is President Donald Trump. At first, we thought it was just Donald Trump, the citizen, perhaps even the candidate. But now you know there was a president as well. Why that's important is because this whole notion of impeachment, the whole notion of a criminal offense, impeachment is about high crimes and misdemeanors. It's not expressly said what they mean by that. There is some nebulous aspect of it. But a felony certainly fits into the category of that. So you're leaning more about why it's problematic on the criminal front, SDNY, who doesn't have the same regulation of not indicting a sitting president. And you also have now the idea of the political hard and rock place, for a hard place and a rock for the president. On both fronts, campaign finance may not seem like a big deal to people, but it's a felony. And somebody has already said Trump is one of them.
And then he talked about the payments and also made them while as president in the Oval Office. Laura Jarrett, today, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, the ranking Republican on that committee, and Mark Meadows, very close allies, both of them, to President Trump, asked the Justice Department to investigate Cohen for possible perjury specifically for lying. I believe this is what the case they're making, lying about he didn't want a job in the Trump White House when he did. There's a ton of evidence, including a comment that he made to Chris Cuomo on his show. Could this actually, what's the legal ramification? He's already going to jail for lying to Congress.
Right. So, of course, the Justice Department doesn't need a referral from the two congressmen, Meadows and Jordan, in order to open up an investigation all on their own. I think it's pretty safe to say they were probably paying very close attention to every word that came out of Michael Cohen's mouth, making sure that not only that he didn't run afoul of any open investigations, but that it didn't run in contradiction to anything that he had told them behind closed doors. Now, obviously, Michael Cohen's lawyer, Lanny Davis, said in a statement to us today that this is just pure partisanship. He testified truthfully. But as you mentioned, I think it really raised a lot of questions about his credibility yesterday when he did say he didn't want a job in the White House, when the Southern District of New York said that they have text messages showing that he thought he was going to get a job in the White House. Now, Meadows and Jordan are also raising this question about whether he said he had never committed bank fraud. Well, he didn't plead guilty to bank fraud. He pled guilty to providing a false statement to a financial institution. So there's some wiggle room on some of these, but on the not wanting a job in the White House, I think that's a tricky one for him.
Laura Coates, some of the most intriguing questions to Cohen came from freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here she is digging into potential bank fraud allegations. Take a listen.
To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
And where could this lead investigators?
Well, it's not a rabbit hole. Now you have a witness list. She just named all the people in response to who would know about this information and who do we need to see and what do we need to see. This is really, really keen of her to do so, because what she did is not just have a hypothetical, theoretical, or simply try to use it to grandstand. She elicited testimony, which is what you're supposed to do at these hearings, to figure out where to go next. Their function in the oversight is actually to have a legislative agenda and figure out where to go next. He just named the people. You can imagine every single one of them going, okay, well, here we go. And only one of them so far I can think about, Alan Weisselberg, he had only limited immunity with respect to the grand jury testimony. Now that he's exposed in front of Congress, well, you may be able to play that immunity function about it and say, what's there to lose? You already had immunity in that category, and now you're a part of our witness list and roadmap. Very smart of her to do.
Yeah, a lesson from the freshmen for some of the elders. Fewer speeches, please. More eliciting of information. Appreciate it. Thanks, Laura. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks.
He didn't run in 2016 for... And our politics lead, Republican Congressman Mark Meadows, vehemently defending himself today against charges of racism after a heated exchange during Michael Cohen's testimony brought new scrutiny from Democratic critics to his past comments. During the Cohen testimony yesterday, Meadows introduced an African-American Trump administration official who's worked for the president for a long time to push back against Cohen's assertion that President Trump is a racist. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat, said that that action itself by Meadows was racist, an accusation to which Meadows took great exception. But as he tried to defend himself, progressive activists resurfaced these comments by Meadows from 2012.
So what we're going to do is take back our country. 2012 is the time that we're going to send Mr. Obama home to Kenya or wherever it is.
Now, Meadows responded this morning by telling CNN that he should not have said that and that he does not have a racial bone in his body. This afternoon, another video of Meadows speaking about President Obama resurfaced from just days after that first one in 2012, suggesting this wasn't just one answer, but may have been something of a talking point at the time.
You know what? We'll send him back home to Kenya or wherever it is. We'll send him back home.
Let's talk about this and more with our experts. Karen Finney, Meadows has said that he shouldn't have said that. What more does he need to do, or is that enough?
I think it's all he can do, right? I mean, look, the reality of this is that Congresswoman Tlaib was correct in that his actions were racist. But I understand that how, as a white man, regardless of whether or not you have black or brown colored kids, children of color, in your family, you may not understand how people who have skin my tone and darker experience the world and why we would see it as racist. And I think that's really the point here. It doesn't, the point she was making is, from her perspective, it felt racist, and it was racist. He may disagree. Obviously, he's got some issues in his background, but virtually, I have members of my own family as a mixed-race person who are white who would say they're not racist. They're not racist, but they still say racist things, and I still find myself having to point out to them that some of the things that they've said are racist, or, hey, that's why people think that's racist. And so, this is a conversation we started to have in 2008 with President Obama's running for office, and I suspect that given the fact that we have the most diverse electorate in our country at this time and the most diverse field of candidates at this time, we're going to have this conversation again about race. And I think what you're seeing is people are much more comfortable speaking up and speaking out and calling foul and really saying that's racist. That's what racism looks like. And I think we have to be open to having that conversation.
All right. Well, while you're talking about candidates, let's turn now to the 2020 campaign, because even the 2020 candidates are still talking about the Cohen testimony. CNN's Leila Santiago caught up with one Democrat excited to make some news of his own. That's our 2020 lead today. Leila joins me now from El Paso, Texas, where she spoke with former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. And Leila, O'Rourke told you that he's made a decision about 2020. What do you have to say?
Right, so he's made a decision. Step one, check, right? But when and where he will make this announcement is still very much unclear. I specifically went to find him after he released a statement saying that he had made a decision with his wife Amy and kids. They were excited to make the announcement, and I went to him and I asked him point blank, are you running for U.S. president? Here's what he said.
You're excited to announce something soon. What is that?
I'm going to be making an announcement soon. I'm going to be making the same announcement to everyone at the same time. Okay. And that's all I can say at this time.
Are you running for president?
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. When will you make that announcement?
Soon.
Please define soon.
No, I can't.
Anything to narrow it down?
I can't. I'm sorry.
It was not lost on me, that smile that he had on his face. The last time he said something was coming soon was when he spoke to Oprah, and that's when she sort of pinned him down and said, is there a timeline? A few weeks ago, he said, I will make a decision by the end of the month. That has happened now that we are at the end of the month. I spoke with his family today. They themselves are still waiting to get word from him as to when this will come, but they did tell me, his sister said she is on board with him vying for a seat in the Oval Office.
All right, I think the smile says it all, but we'll wait for the official announcement. Leila Santiago, the tenacious Leila Santiago, thank you so much. On the heels of those comments from Beto O'Rourke, take a look at this brand new poll out of Texas in a hypothetical matchup between President Trump and Beto O'Rourke. It's a dead heat. 47% pick President Trump, 46% pick Beto O'Rourke. Here are other 2020 matchups from the poll. President Trump with a slight advantage in each matchup. 1 point above Joe Biden, 2 points above Bernie Sanders, 7 points above both Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, 5 points above Julian Castro. Of course, it's early. The polls don't necessarily mean much, but President Trump won Texas by 9 points in 2016. What do you think?
Well, I'd be concerned if I was Donald Trump by that, definitely. That's amazing that you could have really any of those Democrats that close, but looking at Beto, who is known to Texas voters, right? So they're not just blindly, saying, I don't like Trump, so I'll go for this other person, that's somebody that they would consider voting for, I think is really telling in such a red state. So I think that he would be crazy not to run. I'd be very surprised if he didn't run. He has this national profile that people would kill for. And so he comes into the race, if he decides to run, already at the top of the heap. He knows how to fundraise. He's going to have a lot of money. He can go the distance. And so I think, I would be absolutely shocked if he doesn't run.
Another Democrat may be looking to jump in the 2020 race. Sources telling CNN that Michael Bloomberg's team is searching for possible spaces for a campaign headquarters, interviewing people to manage scheduling. What does Michael Bloomberg offer the 2020 Democratic pool that is missing right now, if anything?
I don't know. More money than Trump has? I don't know. And on the Beto point, can I just say, maybe he's just announcing that he's got a really cool new Medium post going up. But no, I think you're right about.
Not a fan of Kerouac.
I think you're right about the numbers in Texas for Beto. I do think running against Ted Cruz is a very different ballgame than running against Kamala Harris in your own party, and he may need to watch out for her skills and many of these other guys' skills on the national stage. But he has the most valuable thing, which is name ID in a giant, giant field.
But Bloomberg can say that he has both been a successful businessman, and remember, in the business community, that was one of the things that they said against Trump.
Campaign against Trump.
As they trolled Trump, right?
He has more money and more success.
He's more successful, and he has been, depending on how you define success, a success.
President Joe Biden would pose the most, the toughest challenge. But some Democrats in the key state of Iowa are raising concerns that Biden has missed his chance. Brett Niles, the Democratic Party chairman in Lynn County, Iowa, told Reuters, the longer he waits, the more people are going to start to want to follow some of the new and younger voices they're hearing. I know you don't want Biden to run because you think he's a threat to Trump.
So everyone in America, just remember, this is about the Electoral College, not about who's going to win California. You know, Michael Bloomberg will crush in New York, great. You know, you'll win by a landslide. This is about putting the pieces together to get to 270. And who stands the best chance of winning those kind of swing states that President Trump won that hadn't been won before? Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Kentucky, you know, those are states. Who's going to stand the best chance? Sherrod Brown is a very strong voice there. I think Amy Klobuchar. I think Beto O'Rourke may have a good chance there. Those, you know, people who run to the center, I think, will do better in those states, obviously.
Are you worried that Biden is waiting too long? Or not worried? Do you think that Biden's waiting?
Yeah, I mean, I think he should make a decision and he should get in if he wants to win. But you know, there's a big debate going on about what you just said, right? So I'm assuming you're operating under the assumption that they would turn out white middle class voters. Whereas, you know, if you look there, you know, I think I'm actually more in the camp that you need somebody who's going to energize the people that Obama energized who didn't turn out during the last election. And so I think that could point to more of a Kamala Harris and in particularly a younger candidate probably. So I think that if you had most of those people turn out the way they turned out for Obama, things would have gone very differently for Hillary Clinton versus going and trying to get voters who may be lost.
Yeah, but not in Pennsylvania. If you look at the numbers, Hillary Clinton outperformed. She did extremely well in Pennsylvania. So you got to look. I mean, those states. You know, President Trump just got 50,000 more people to turn out than ever turned out before. Historic highs in some of these counties, and that's what I think needs to be focused on.
Speaking of Pennsylvania, Bryce Harper's going to the Phillies. Just neighbors with bad blood and nukes closer to the brink. We're live in India as President Trump now weighs in on the crisis between two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. Coming up next. On the brink of all-out war. Over the last few days, long-simmering tensions have spiked between India and Pakistan. Bombings and airstrikes are sparking fears around the globe that the hostilities could possibly escalate into a catastrophe. As CNN's Alex Marquardt now reports, this latest round of fighting began after a Pakistan-based terrorist group killed 40 Indian soldiers.
With all the drama around President Trump's summit with Kim Jong-un and the president's former fixer testifying on Capitol Hill, it was drowning out a dangerous turn of events, the prospect of war between two nuclear-armed longtime enemies, India and Pakistan. Days of deadly violence flaring up between the historic adversaries after India said it carried out an airstrike against terrorists in Pakistan. Pakistan responding, claiming they shot down 2 Indian jets in the contested Kashmir region, which both countries claim as their own. An Indian pilot was captured.
What was your mission? I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to tell you this.
This is a situation where you have militaries who are built up around each other. They see each other as primary threats. And it's been a very combustible situation for a number of years now.
Several of the world's major powers, including the United States, have called on the two countries to restrain themselves. President Trump telling reporters in Hanoi he's hearing attractive news.
We've been in the middle trying to help them both out, see if we can get some organization and some peace, and I think probably that's going to be happening.
Between the two, India and Pakistan have almost 300 nuclear weapons. India's public and Prime Minister cheering on the actions of their military against Pakistan.
India will work as one. India will grow as one. India will fight as one. India will win as one.
Both sides right now have both a political incentive to calm things down, and of course neither side really sees an upside, I think, in a full military conflict at this stage.
Pakistan's new, relatively untested Prime Minister, Imran Khan, who's a former cricket star, has called for dialogue between two sides.
From day one, when this government came into office, Prime Minister Imran Khan offered that if you take one step towards peace, we will take two. Pakistan never wants to escalate. Pakistan never wants to be in a hostile position.
And Jay, gunfire across the border has left at least 4 civilians dead in Pakistan, according to the military. India has put its air defenses on high alert. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has spoken to both of the country's prime ministers, calling on them to de-escalate. Jake.
Marquardt, thank you so much. I want to go now to CNN's Sam Kiley, who's on the ground in New Delhi, India. Sam, Pakistan said it would release the Indian pilot who was in custody after his plane was shot down yesterday. Some are calling this an olive branch. How is India reacting to the offer?
Well, so far the only reaction from